But first, a former kingitanga advisor has unleashed an unprecedented attack on the Māori king, Tuku Morgan has written a scathing email criticising King Tuheitia's leadership skills, calling him a puppet and a letdown. He's also taken a really pointed and detailed swipe at the king's chief advisor, Rangi Whakaruru, criticising his spending, his salary, his car, his travel and his management. It comes at a time when the king and his followers would expect to be celebrating just days before their annual coronation jubilee celebrations in Ngārawa Wahia. Our Māori news correspondent Lee Marama McLaughlin told me there have been ongoing issues with the kingitanga movement since Mr Morgan stepped down from his role as the king's advisor last year.
There's obviously some tension around him leaving the actual organisation. It feels like this has been years of resentment boiling over. Most of the letter, though, John, is actually attacking the chief advisor to the king, Rangi Whakaruru. He has a go at Mr Whakaruru's high salary, which is apparently $250,000. He claims that Mr Whakaruru took out a loan of $83,000, that he has these extended trips overseas that achieve nothing. He drives a luxury SUV. All Mr Morgan says are being funded by the King's Trust. All the while he says children in Ngārawa Wahia are going hungry. You'll know the trust at the moment, John, the Ururangi Trust is currently being investigated by the Serious Fraud Office. Their office actually raided the King's Waikato office, late last month, took documents, hard drives, and all of that is still ongoing. Now, Mr Morgan puts that whole investigation down to Mr Whakaruru's management and spending ways. He warns the King is doomed if he sticks with Mr Whakaruru and is calling really strongly to have Mr Whakaruru sacked.
Gosh, these are strong, serious and very specific allegations and accusations, Lee Marama. What are people saying about it?
Well, first and foremost, I tried to reach Tuku Morgan today. You know, why have you sent this letter? How are you feeling now that it's all off your chest? But he hasn't responded to any of my attempts to contact him. I've text messaged him, I've called him. I did get in touch with Sir Wera Gardner, who is acting as the communications advisor for the kingitanga movement. He said because the Serious Fraud Office is investigating that they won't be making any comments about it. We did hear today from Nanaia Mahuta, the Māori Development Minister, the Waikato Tainui MP, who has strong ties to the kingitanga. Look, she sounded really upset about the claims that have been made. She says she was at the hui that Mr Morgan talks about at the start of his letter, and she acknowledges that some things were said that related to the leadership of the trust and that were referring to Mr Morgan himself. So sort of backs up the reason why Mr Morgan wrote the letter in the first place. She says that this has raised a lot of concerns, but that actually tribal members have had huge anxieties around the governance structures in place within the kingitanga for quite some time. In the letter, there is also some discussion around former directors of the trust, Tracy Haupapa from the Māori Federated Farmers, and Sir John Galter. Mr Morgan says that they lost their jobs as a result of Mr Whakaruru. So I spoke to them both today. Both of them were fairly tight-lipped about the claims made in the letter, but Sir John did say that these issues have been ongoing and he was not completely surprised by some of the points that have been raised in that letter. Wouldn't go further because the Serious Fraud Office is currently investigating. I got in touch with them. They were aware of the letter after I got in touch with them earlier today. They're interested in the details of the letter, but they wouldn't be clear on whether or not those details could be used as part of the investigation that's underway. And look, all of this days out from Waikato Tainui's social event of the year, the Koro Neihana, the coronation event. Come Friday, hundreds of people will be pouring into Ngārawa Wahia to celebrate King Tuheitia and the kingitanga movement. It's 5 days of colour and vibrancy. Obviously that's going to be impacted by this. And I think a lot of people will be quite interested to see how the King reacts in that forum and whether or not he mentions anything about it in the speech that he generally gives at that event.
Lee Marama, one final question before you go, and that is Mr Whakaruru himself. Any word from him today?
No, so look, we put all our feelers out there, the Māori News team here, to try and get in touch with him. When I got the reply from Sir Weta Gardner, I said to him, look, is Rangi commenting personally? And he said, no, I'm responding on behalf of the King's office. And so I just put a cheeky question again and saying, look, can I get his number? But it looks like the King's office, which is encompassing of Mr Whakaruru, is not saying anything about this until the Serious Fraud Office investigation is complete.
Lee Marama McLaughlin speaking to us earlier. Obviously, we would love to talk to Mr Whakaruru about all of the allegations made by Mr Morgan, quite extraordinary in their detail, and the vociferousness with which they are made.